Once upon a time, in a village called Habayu, there was a very severe famine in the land. It killed multiple people, and even the animals weren't spared. For some, they killed their children to eat, and for the others, their children ate them. It was that bad that there was not even water to drink. Everything was in chaos and shambles. The tortoise, as we all know, even when there was surplus of food, it was very lazy. How much more now that there was nothing to eat? For this reason, it began to starve as well. His wife was already paralyzed and weak due to hunger, and he has now lost two of his children to famine. Then one day, he began to think deeply about the way forward after everything that has befallen him and his family. So he said, it was time to take matters into my own hands and survive against all odds. Then he took his cutlass and set out that he would kill whatever he finds on his way and bring home for his family to eat. But unfortunately, he couldn't find any as he continued to journey into the forest day after day. One day, he got tired and sat under a palm tree beside the river, enjoying the cool breeze and quietness. Suddenly, he looked up and saw this strange coconut tree in the middle of the river with an immature coconut. He was very excited because he had at least found something for himself and his family, even though it was just one immature coconut. After he had rested a bit, he got up and started climbing the tree to pluck the fruits. Unfortunately, as the coconut dropped, it fell inside the water and began to swim away. Then the tortoise, determined he would get the fruits no matter what, began to swim after it. But the fruit kept going and going and going, and the tortoise kept following and following and following inside the water. Suddenly, the coconut got to a place and landed on the hand of an old woman. The tortoise looked at the woman and said that was his fruit, hence it should be returned to him because it was his only hope of survival for himself and his family for the next few days. Then he began to narrate his ordeal to the old woman and what the famine had caused in his village. The woman listened to him attentively and told him she was the goddess of the sea, and further said she was the one that sent the sea to bring the coconut for her because she needed it as well. But she told the tortoise not to worry, for she would give him more than enough food that he and his generations to come will never go hungry again. She then called forth a calabash and gave the tortoise and said, whenever you want to eat anything, just sing to the calabash to bring forth the food inside it, and it would. After their conversation, she told the tortoise to enter her room, and she disappeared. When the tortoise entered the room, he suddenly found himself in his own house. He then decided to try out his newly found treasure and sang to it to bring out its food. Then he started raining foods from different angles of his room. He ate to his fill, then invited his family to join afterwards. There were different kinds of foods and drinks available, ranging from rice, beans, amala, pounded yam, different fruits, and wines of all kinds. When one suffers so hard to get a thing, isn't it supposed to be guarded diligently? But that was not so with the tortoise. He set out and he began to invite every kind of people and animals to come to his house that he will be feeding them for the next 7 days. Then his fame began to spread far and near that the tortoise is about to do the unthinkable. People started praising and worshipping him. After all, a rich man is friend to many. This made the king of the village very jealous, but there was nothing he could do, for he was also hungry. Now, it was a set time to feed the villagers. Everyone gathered round in their numbers, and the tortoise came with his calabash and sang for it to produce its food as usual. Before they knew it, it started raining foods, and everyone ate and drank to their fill. All of a sudden, a fight broke out. Because as we all know, wherever there is a wine, there must be a fight. Bass, both everywhere. Everyone began to fight each other, and there was a great commotion. Unfortunately, someone from nowhere threw a stone and it landed on the calabash and smashed it into pieces. The tortoise, sad and hungry, began to think again on what to do next. His only option was to go back to the river goddess to get another calabash. He stepped out and began a new journey. To the same spot he saw the first coconut, and there was indeed another one. He climbed up the tree and cut it off, but this time the coconut landed on dry ground. But the tortoise, being clever, decided to throw the coconut inside the river. The river rejected it and threw it back to the tortoise. The tortoise picked up the coconut again and threw it back to the river. This happened 3 different times, until the river surrendered and began to ship the coconut to the goddess again like the other time. The tortoise followed as usual and finally got to the goddess. The goddess was surprised to see him again as the tortoise narrated what had happened and how the villagers smashed the calabash. So the goddess said, "I will give you something stronger so you won't have to bother coming here again, because this time, this one can never break." The goddess handed him over a rod and told him when he gets to his room, he should sing to the rod to do what it knows best to do. The tortoise was very happy and excited and entered the same room he had existed from the previous time. Now, in his own house, he locked himself up alone again and began to sing to the rod as usual. Then the rod came alive and it began to strike the tortoise everywhere, all over his body. He didn't spare any part of his body. The tortoise was beaten without mercy from head to toes. When the tortoise saw what had happened, he then thought to himself what must be done. After all, everyone that partook in the sweetness also has the right to partake in its bitterness. So he set out again to invite all the villagers that he would be feeding them again for another 7 days. Hence, they should gather round his house. The news spread so wide like fire. This time, more people came, ever since they heard what had happened the previous time. So they were ready to eat and marry. Then when everyone was gathered, the tortoise told them he won't be joining them in the feasting due to the fight that broke out the last time, because he was present there. Hence, this time, he would lock himself up in his room so that they could all enjoy their feast without a fight, and everyone agreed. With this, the tortoise called one of the people and taught him what to say to the rod to bring it to life and do what it knows how to do best. Afterwards, the tortoise disappeared while the whole village was in great excitement. The one holding the rod sang the song of the rod, and before they knew it, strokes of canes started landing on everyone. Nobody was spared. They were beaten so hard, both young and old, without mercy. Until finally, the beating stopped. And then came the tortoise to apologize for the beatings, saying he had also had his own taste of the beating, so he felt he should share it, since they also shared the food together. Children, Can you tell me one or two things you have learned